5 years ago, David Miller's first love miscarried. She accused me of deliberately pushing her down the stairs. My pleas were useless. I was branded with the accusation of being a jealous woman responsible for the death of David Miller's own son. The Miller family's influence got me sentenced to 8 years in prison. They let me out early to give his idealized woman a kidney. But when David Miller found out I only had one kidney source, he went mad again. The prison warden politely handed me over to the person who came to pick me up. After 5 years, David Miller's features were more defined. His eyes, through his glasses, glinted with a cold light, an emotion I still couldn't decipher. He looked me over carefully, then suddenly smiled. "You've gained weight. Of course, we didn't mistreat you in prison," the warden said, pinching me as he spoke, then launched into flattering remarks. That pinch landed exactly where I'd been hit earlier that day. Tears immediately welled up. David Miller narrowed his eyes, the sneer on his lips becoming more pronounced. "Putting on a show of pity just makes me sick. Olivia must be crying because she's happy about getting out, right?" Sarah Jenkins' voice rang out, a hint of innocence in her eyes. Instinctively, I apologized to them. The rules of survival had taught me to first learn to show weakness. David Miller's frown deepened, and the warden quickly pushed me towards him. "Get in the car quickly, forget about what happened in prison once you're outside this gate, and start a new life properly." I knew he wanted me to remain silent forever. David Miller raised a hand, blocking me from almost bumping into him. A wave of women's perfume hit my nose, and I threw up all over him. It wasn't my fault. An hour ago, I was still cornered and humiliated by the gang leader in prison. A utility knife had left countless tiny cuts on my body. The warden, who usually ignored me and even participated sometimes, walked in, ordered someone to wash me clean, change me into fresh clothes, and even prepared a table full of food for me. I thought it was my last meal. Long-term hunger made me gorge myself. I ate all the food. My stomach felt terrible, whether it was a flare-up of my stomach problems or just from eating too much, I didn't know. I swayed, feeling like I couldn't stand it anymore. Sarah Jenkins looked visibly annoyed. "Olivia, that was David Miller's new suit I bought for him. Were you trying to do that on purpose?" Tears glistened on her beautiful face, making anyone who saw her want to protect her. She turned to David Miller, looking wronged. "I wish I hadn't insisted on coming. Now Olivia's upset seeing me, and you're dragged into it." She was still the same as before, always playing innocent. David Miller yanked me in front of her, his tone firm. "Apologize." I looked at the face that haunted my dreams repeatedly and threw up again. This time, it was Sarah Jenkins' turn to scream. The atmosphere became incredibly awkward. Sarah Jenkins' voice was hoarse from screaming. The smell of vomit completely overpowered their expensive perfumes. Especially Sarah Jenkins, her carefully applied makeup now looked like a clown's. Seeing the driver and the warden scrambling to clean them up, I couldn't help but want to laugh. But pain shot through me everywhere, and I started to tremble. David Miller had already taken off his jacket. He rushed towards me, grabbing my collar. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? Do you have any idea how much Sarah Jenkins has been pleading for you these past few years? Otherwise, how would you have had such a good environment? She's so sick and still insisted on coming to pick you up. Can't you learn some tolerance from her?" I saw Sarah Jenkins' cold, triumphant gaze. How ironic. From the day I entered prison, I had received special care. The gang leader in prison hid razor blades in my towel and laughed when they saw my face covered in blood. My food was stolen, dirty water was poured on me, and I was publicly humiliated. Countless nights, I was dragged out of bed and thrown into the toilet. Stripped of my family's protection, I became the lowest victim. This was all David Miller's doing. He pretended to enter a strategic marriage alliance with me but secretly undermined my family's business behind the scenes. When my father was hospitalized, the company's shareholders started to turn against us. Finally, my father died of anger, and I was wrongly sent to prison. What did his lawyer say? Right, intentional homicide, intentional injury. That day, his eyes held only endless hatred for me. If the law hadn't forbidden it, he surely would have had me sentenced to death. However, the days I spent in prison were enough to make me wish I were dead. Now, was I supposed to be grateful that they hadn't killed me? I fiercely scratched David Miller. My broken nails left blood marks on the back of his hand. He pulled hard, and my clothes ripped. The wound on my chest was faintly visible. He seemed to notice it and was about to uncover it when Sarah Jenkins walked over and draped her jacket over me. She blamed David Miller. Don't be angry with Olivia. She's been in prison for so long, she must have some mental issues. Don't mind her. The flicker of emotion on David Miller's face vanished. He glared at me again. Do you know you were wrong? Wrong, I nodded. My mistake was believing your lies and letting my family suffer all this for nothing. His smile disappeared instantly. Olivia Hart, he roared, his face full of fury. Have you been too comfortable in prison? I looked at him defiantly. The doctor said my physical functions were severely damaged, and how long I lived depended entirely on fate. I had held on, gritting my teeth, just so I could take at least one of them with me when I got out. If I'd had any weapon in my hand, I would have stabbed David Miller through the heart. Sarah Jenkins stepped between us. Her voice implies a spoiled, complaining tone, maybe whining softly. Don't be like that to Olivia. I'm fine. Saying that, she coughed a few times. She was always like this, mediating when David Miller and I clashed, portraying herself as wronged but forgiving, and always belittling me. David Miller immediately cradled her protectively, comforting her in a low voice for a few moments, then coldly urged me into the car. He said he'd deal with me properly when we got back. I leaned against the passenger seat, seeing David Miller gently wiping away the filth for Sarah Jenkins in the rearview mirror. He was clearly a germaphobe. When I accidentally fell into the manure at the stables years ago, he covered his nose and ran faster than anyone. It seemed his germophobia was just for me. Thinking this, my eyelids gradually drooped. When I was a child, David Miller was really good to me. Our families were neighbors, and I often followed him around playing. I had rhinitis and always had a runny nose. His friends would tease me, say I was dirty, and didn't want him to play with me. He would help me wipe it clean and even fight them for me. She's my sister. If you bully her again, I'm coming after you. David Miller's mother even joked back then, suggesting they'd arrange for us to marry someday. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. I just blinked and said okay. Every time he left for school, I would hold onto his arm and wouldn't let go. He would crouch down and patiently coax me with candy. Will you come back if I leave? Of course. I promise Olivia will see me every day. And we'll live together later. Back then, I thought David Miller was the best person in the world. Until H's relationship with Sarah Jenkins became school gossip. He was 3 years older than me and was about to graduate high school. Friends in our circle liked to compare me and Sarah Jenkins. I did nothing, but because they always used me to provoke Sarah Jenkins, I was portrayed as a vicious female villain. David Miller dragged me to the rooftop and warned me he'd push me off if I ever bullied Sarah Jenkins again. He wouldn't listen to my explanations at all. Actually, I was only 14 then and didn't even understand what love was. I hadn't even figured out if my feelings for David Miller were sibling affection or genuine liking. Sarah Jenkins back then already liked to play innocent, deliberately saying I was making things difficult for her. Naturally, I couldn't compare to her position in David Miller's heart, but I had my family and friends. My friends were very protective of me, which only angered David Miller further. He decided I was a woman who was jealous because I couldn't get his love. Our arguments became more intense, and I even hit Sarah Jenkins. I was still young then and couldn't keep things to myself, so I went home and told my parents. I heard David Miller was made to kneel all night. He went on a hunger strike, ran away, used every means possible to make his family accept Sarah Jenkins. He even said he would marry no one but her. Things became cliché after that. David Miller was sent abroad and completely separated from Sarah Jenkins. But as soon as he returned to the country, he was back with the woman he'd always idealized. The Miller family had a huge uproar during that time. Just as my family was on the decline and needed outside help, the two families started discussing a strategic marriage alliance. Discussing, they called it, but really, we had no other choice. David Miller and I hated each other, but I also knew my family needed me, so I could only compromise. Though, about trying to explain to him, but he had completely turned me into his enemy. When I said I didn't want to marry, he thought I was gloating. The tense atmosphere at home continued until I graduated, and the wedding was put on the agenda. David Miller suddenly became very compliant, letting his family arrange everything. In the past 2 years, he had taken over the family business and made it thrive. Until the wedding day, Sarah Jenkins, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, appeared. She came to find me, heavily pregnant, but fell down the stairs. The blood on the ground and the screams of the crowd mingled together. She said I pushed her. The dream was too vivid, and I jolted awake, hitting my head on the car window. We had arrived at our destination. It was the Miller family mansion. David Miller carefully helped Sarah Jenkins out of the car. Then he told the driver to take me inside too. I looked at the villa, both familiar and strange, but stopped at the door. I want to go back to my own home. Where do you have a home? David Miller turned his head, his face full of contempt. My heart tightened. My home had been confiscated long ago. Sarah Jenkins lost her 8-month pregnancy. Coincidentally, the security cameras were broken at that time. How could an ordinary girl possibly dare to accuse a wealthy young lady like me? So what she said must be true. David Miller almost strangled me on the spot. His original plan was for Sarah Jenkins to have the child outside. Once he was stable, he would divorce me and then bring her into the family. But the accidental miscarriage of the child shattered everything. Even though my father knelt and begged him, he couldn't save me. Our company was gone too. Countless times in prison, I regretted not fighting David Miller in school. At least then, he might have considered our past connection, and my father wouldn't have died of anger. My fists clenched involuntarily. Sarah Jenkins leaned weakly against David Miller. David, I don't feel well. Don't provoke her anymore. David Miller scooped her up and strode inside without looking back. I was forcibly pulled inside by the butler. The staff in the house acted based on the master's moods. David Miller looked down on me, so naturally, no one was willing to show me respect. A cleaner who was mopping came up to me. Are you the new helper? Why do you look so lifeless? Go change and get to work. David Miller stopped, but he didn't turn back. In his eyes, defending me for even a word was unnecessary. I changed into a cleaner's uniform. It was a bit small. The person in the mirror had a changed figure, vacant eyes, and acne on my forehead. I looked ugly. These were side effects of the medication's hormones. I couldn't control them. As I walked past a bedroom carrying a basin of water, I heard David Miller gently comforting Sarah Jenkins, telling her not to be afraid. The staff members were privately sighing about David Miller's deep affection for her. I heard they brought Olivia Hart out this time to give Miss Jenkins a kidney transplant. I had known this news 2 hours ago. Letting me out 3 years early was clearly not due to a change of heart. Sarah Jenkins had developed uremia in recent years due to poor diet. With the Miller family's resources, finding a suitable kidney wouldn't be difficult. But they specifically requested mine, and the reason was obvious. However, even if I were dying, I wouldn't become Sarah Jenkins' lifeline. I walked to the spot where David Miller and I used to play, sat down against the wall, and fell asleep. I had never had a good night's sleep in prison. Even though my whole body was uncomfortable now, I felt a sense of peace. When I woke up, David Miller was there again. He looked down at me condescendingly. I've prepared a room for you. I sat cross-legged on the floor, unable to stand up due to exhaustion. He stared at me coldly for a while, then said, as if granting a favor, you should know why you were released from prison. Just one less kidney, our family can afford to take care of you. Consider it compensation to Sarah Jenkins. He paused, then added, once her body recovers, we'll go to City Hall and get the marriage license. I was stunned. He thought I was surprised, and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. We didn't get a chance to get the license back then. I'll make it up to you, and I'll be responsible for you. I finally found the strength to stand up and, with a sweep of my hand, splashed the basin of water out. Go to hell with getting the license. I wish you would drop dead right now. Being in prison for so long, I was used to speaking my mind, including using swear words. David Miller's hair was soaked, water dripping from his eyelashes. His expression shifted from shock to anger. Olivia Hart. Don't push your luck. Do you think you're still the young lady you were back then? If it weren't for me, you'd have died in there long ago. I suddenly couldn't help but burst into laughter, laughing until my heart ached. Right, isn't that exactly what you wanted? To watch me suffer, wishing I was dead? Without you, I should have been killed long ago, shouldn't I? Every time I was beaten, someone would send me to the hospital, as if everyone was afraid I might actually die. I guess David Miller must have paid them a lot. Otherwise, the weakest inmate inside wouldn't be tormented daily like I was. What do you mean? His brow furrowed. I wanted to push him, but I had no strength at all. My fist felt like it was hitting cotton. I roared, my voice hoarse. David Miller, stop pretending, will you? Haven't you had your fill of laughing at me these past 5 years? Are you thinking now that since I'm going to die? Anyway, my last bit of value might as well be contributed to that woman, and it won't be wasted? I don't owe you anything. She climbed the stairs herself and fell herself. And that child wasn't yours. My emotions were too overwhelming, and suddenly everything went black. I never said those last words, collapsing straight forward. Before losing consciousness, I heard Sarah Jenkins' footsteps. David, I feel so bad. When I woke up again, I found myself in a hospital bed. The nurse taking care of me was an older staff member from the Miller family. She recognized me. Oh, young lady, how much you suffered in prison. Why so many injuries? I realized my clothes had been changed, and those ugly scars must have been seen. It's nothing, just minor injuries. I pulled the blanket tighter. The nurse wanted to notify David Miller. Anyway, you grew up together. How could he do this to you? They were supposed to send you to the hospital, but then Miss Jenkins came. Oh dear. She didn't finish, but I understood. I could never compare to Sarah Jenkins in David Miller's heart. However, I didn't care about that anymore. With David Miller gone, I felt more at ease. I borrowed some money from the nurse and took a taxi to my parents' cemetery. The pine trees beside them were growing thick. My parents' joint photo was placed together, wiped clean. I knelt and kowtowed 3 times. My parents had always been very much in love, giving me the illusion that I would have such a family too. Fortunately, they didn't know what their daughter had gone through in prison. I poured out a glass of whiskey, and tears streamed down my face. I was once a princess adored by everyone, only to have my whole family ruined by a scheming woman. My father blamed himself on his deathbed, thinking that if the company had done better, I wouldn't have been framed and sent to prison. But it should be my fault. I shouldn't have followed David Miller around when I was little, making him narcissistic enough to think I would do those shameless things to get him. Dad, Mom, I'll be joining you soon. Don't worry, I won't let those enemies get away. A shadow fell over me from behind. David Miller stood there, holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, his voice flat. I visit them often. What gives you the right to be here? I kicked over the flowers he had placed. They were gone. Why was he pretending to be a good person now? He stared at me as if I were crazy. As he came closer, he threatened me coldly. Olivia Hart, I'm warning you one last time. Don't test my patience. I could easily get rid of you right now, but I'm not that kind of person. As long as you apologize to Sarah Jenkins, I'll keep supporting you. Get lost. I kicked him again. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong, and I couldn't break free. I was too lenient with you in prison. You haven't shown any remorse at all. He suddenly leaned in close. Isn't everything you do just to stay by my side? But who would like you the way you are now? Always pretending to be sick to get attention in front of me. Do you really think I'll feel sorry for you? His pupils reflected my expression, which probably looked like a snarling dog's. Mockery, disdain, and disgust were written on his face. The next second, Sarah Jenkins' weak voice came again. David, I didn't see you when I woke up. I was scared. Her eyes were red. David Miller immediately let go of me and quickly comforted her, telling her not to be afraid. She leaned on David Miller's shoulder, her eyes holding that familiar look of triumph. I suddenly laughed. You seem quite afraid of me being alone with David Miller. Her face changed. David Miller glared at me, and I was even more eager to see the show. Are you afraid I'll reveal that secret? You. Olivia! I know you've suffered these past few years, I truly love David. I was young then and didn't know I'd cause you so much trouble. I apologize to you now. Please stop being angry with him, okay? It was my fault you went to prison. Anyway, I have uremia. I won't get treatment. Let me die. I'll atone for you. I won't fight you for David. Sarah Jenkins started crying and seemed about to faint. David Miller quickly held her up. You don't need to blame yourself. All this is her own doing. With that, he picked up Sarah Jenkins again. I was sick of this woman always pretending so convincingly, and David Miller acting like a brainless fool. Driven by a desire for revenge, I suddenly pushed the two of them who were standing at the bottom of the steps. Unfortunately, David Miller reacted faster than I did. They were fine, but I was pushed by David Miller in the same motion and hit the gravestone on the next level. The hard stone struck me, causing excruciating pain, and I couldn't get up for a while. Sarah Jenkins actually cried. Don't be like that to Olivia. She's all alone. It's pathetic. Anyone who tries to hurt you, I won't let them get away with it. David Miller's voice was still soft and gentle towards her. I was grabbed by a bodyguard and forcibly dragged into another car. I was put under house arrest by David Miller. Olivia Hart, I didn't want to make things difficult, but you keep trying to hurt Sarah Jenkins. You know the consequences of going against me, right? If I didn't need your kidney, I'd really wish you were back in prison right now. He stood up, his polished shoes making a crisp sound on the floor. Sarah Jenkins followed close behind. She looked at me, her eyes full of cunning. What to do now? Even our Miss Hart has days like this, huh? I watched her calmly. She was in a good mood, completely different from her previous weak demeanor. The surgery is next week. David Miller won't know you only have one kidney. Then we'll just say you died on the operating table. That way, he'll be completely mine. You know, for someone who was locked up, you still managed to catch his attention. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even wanted your kidney. I looked at her, saying nothing. She seemed pleased with my expression and patted my face again. Olivia Hart, it's a shame about your face too. If it had turned out like this earlier, he wouldn't have been thinking about you for so long. I won't let you die for nothing. It's my birthday the day after tomorrow. David Miller said he'd throw me a lavish party. Maybe you'll even see many old friends. I'll let you feel a bit of happiness one last time. After she finished speaking, I suddenly stood up, grabbed her hair, and used all the moves they had used on me in prison on her. Sarah Jenkins' screams echoed throughout the room. When David Miller arrived, her face was already half swollen. David, I really just came to see Olivia out of kindness. I don't know why she suddenly got angry. I smiled, watching her continue to fake it, and then David Miller punched me hard. Do you know? I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. She's lied to you about a lot of things. David, don't hit Olivia. It's my fault. Please come back with me. Sarah Jenkins called out weakly. I knew this trick would definitely make her persuade David Miller to leave. Probably as punishment, no one brought me food for the next 2 days. But I was used to it from prison, so it wasn't a big deal. My body just ached more every day, often making me feel like I was about to die. On Sarah Jenkins' birthday, the entire villa was lively. David Miller wanted me to come out. Sarah Jenkins doesn't hold a grudge against you. She specifically told me to have you come to the party. If you dare to mess things up, I'll make your life hell. When my family was wealthy, those people had often mocked her. Now the situation was complete. LY reversed, and all she wanted was to make me look foolish in public. When I appeared before the guests in clothes I hadn't washed for 3 days, it caused a wave of whispers. Isn't that Olivia Hart? How did she end up like this? Haven't heard from her in years. When did she get out of prison? It's disgusting, completely different from before. I thought she was dead by now. But living like this is worse than death. Although David Miller and Sarah Jenkins weren't married yet, everyone already assumed she was his significant other. Allowing me to appear at the party looking like this was clearly something David Miller had permitted. Whether genuinely or trying to please David Miller, their insults towards me were undisguised. Even though they had once used me to belittle Sarah Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins clearly enjoyed these words, showing off their affection with David Miller in front of everyone. Amidst the crowd's flattery, I slowly walked over to the piano. Excuse me, can I use this? I have a gift for today's birthday girl. I announced into the microphone. All eyes turned to me. I pressed the voice recorder, and Sarah Jenkins' smug words echoed through the ballroom. Sarah Jenkins was the first to react. She frantically tried to snatch the voice recorder from my hand. I grabbed the glass nearby and threw it at her. Red liquid dripped down her hair, and her screams were completely unrefined. Before anyone could grab me, I looked David Miller directly in the eyes and said, word by word, Sarah Jenkins isn't carrying your child. It's someone else's. This was the ultimate betrayal, most explosive when revealed to the largest crowd. I was pushed to the ground by Sarah Jenkins, but I was still smiling happily. I had ruined all the dignity they wanted. No matter how much David Miller trusted Sarah Jenkins, he wouldn't be able to resist investigating now. Even if he didn't, there would be busybodies digging for the truth. I was very grateful to the helper who was willing to lend me money so I could catch Sarah Jenkins red-handed. We wrestled on the ground, and Sarah Jenkins was no match for me. I used the shards of glass on the floor to cut her fingertips. She cried out in pain as if she were about to faint. I squeezed again, and she came back to her senses. I learned all this in prison. Thanks for the lesson. Sarah Jenkins stumbled to David Miller's side. David, help me. No one dared to approach me in that frantic state. The shards in my hand even cut me, but I felt nothing. David Miller didn't immediately help her up as he usually did. His gaze remained fixed on me. You. What do you mean? David, don't believe her. Those are fake. They're not my words. Sarah Jenkins' agitation made her look even more like she was trying to cover something up. She struggled, grabbing David Miller's sleeve, trying to pull him away. But David Miller didn't move. He gently pushed Sarah Jenkins away and took a few steps towards me. How do you only have one kidney? He seemed to finally realize that I couldn't have possibly faked the audio during the days I was under house arrest. Sarah Jenkins rushed over and pushed him. David, don't believe. He suddenly used force, grabbing Sarah Jenkins and demanding, what else are you hiding from me? Sarah Jenkins' face turned ashen. I watched them calmly. Sarah Jenkins was still desperately using pouting and playing innocent to try and make David Miller leave. A sense of revenge surged within me. She had lost face in front of everyone. Would David Miller still want her? All her efforts seemed to be for nothing. I started to tremble again. Whenever I got emotional, I was prone to collapsing. I could only use my last bit of strength to tell David Miller about the child. The Miller's second daughter knows the whole truth. As I collapsed, I felt someone catch me. Someone was calling my name urgently in my ear, telling me to wake up. It felt like I had a very long dream. In the dream, Mom and Dad were there, and I refused to agree to the suggested arrangement for David Miller and me to marry someday. When I woke up, I saw David Miller's anxious, enlarged face. Olivia. David Miller looked at me, seemingly with a lot to say, but unable to speak. I assumed he already knew about the child. After he went abroad, Sarah Jenkins hadn't remained faithful to him. After they got back together, Sarah Jenkins found out she was pregnant. If it had been someone else's child, she might have chosen to have it. But unfortunately, the child's biological father was a foreigner. She didn't dare take that risk. David Miller's doting on her had reached its peak at that time. Always believing the child was his, he took such meticulous care of her that Sarah Jenkins had no opportunity to get an abortion. David Miller had even used the child to pressure his parents. If it were discovered that the child wasn't of the Miller bloodline, Sarah Jenkins would be completely finished. She was also afraid I would actually go through with the strategic marriage alliance with David Miller, so she devised this plan that killed two birds with one stone. I should have told David Miller all this a long time ago, but back then, he was completely devoted to Sarah Jenkins and wouldn't have believed it at all. The Miller family didn't dare offend the Miller family, so they suppressed the matter. Thinking about it now, I found it somewhat ridiculous. Such a simple matter had involved so many lives. I asked out of curiosity, "You don't still believe Sarah Jenkins, do you?" "I'm sorry." His voice held a trace of imperceptible trembling. "I truly didn't know you suffered all that in prison. I had made arrangements back then. I told them to prepare a private cell for you. I wanted you to be comfortable in there. Who knew that vicious woman, Sarah Jenkins, would use my name?" I cut him off. "No need to explain. It's all the same, whether it was you or her, isn't it?" David Miller, such a shrewd businessman, if he had genuinely cared, how could he have allowed Sarah Jenkins to succeed? He actually didn't care whether I lived or died. In 5 years, even if he had visited me just once, he would have discovered the truth. "I'm sorry." I was tired of listening and turned my head, signaling for David Miller to leave. A nurse came in to change my dressing. The pulled-up sleeve revealed the crisscrossing scars. After several attempts, she couldn't find a vein to insert the needle accurately. "Is this domestic abuse?" the young nurse asked directly, her gaze involuntarily shifting to David Miller. "You're so young, how did your body end up like this?" "I can help you call the police." David Miller guiltily looked away and walked to the window. I reassured the nurse, "No need, my health is just poor." After everything was done, David Miller sat down beside me, his eyes full of sadness. He reached out and gently stroked the scars on the back of my hand. "Does it hurt a lot?" I pulled my hand back, answering nonchalantly, "It's been years. I don't feel it anymore." "Oh, right, you said I got fat, didn't you?" "That's because my health deteriorated later, and some people were afraid I would die, so they gave me a lot of medication. Too many hormones. I had fought back from the first day I was beaten. But they outnumbered me, I couldn't win. The most serious time, I broke 3 ribs. Later, they were probably afraid I'd be beaten to death, so they sent me to be harvested for organs. Except for my kidneys, they had tampered with other organs that weren't directly fatal. I couldn't live without medication anymore." David Miller said all this was instigated by Sarah Jenkins. He shed many tears in front of me, just like when he used to coax me as a child, telling me he would help me get revenge. My heart remained unmoved. My plan all along was to use his hand to deal with Sarah Jenkins. Making these two turn against each other had been my consistent desire. If David Miller truly wanted to uncover the truth, it would have been incredibly easy for him. Even the rumors in school could easily be proven to have been spread by Sarah Jenkins herself. David Miller was furious with Sarah Jenkins. I found it somewhat ironic that the woman he thought he had loved so deeply for so many years had been treating him like a fool. Given his personality, how could he possibly tolerate such a blow? He stopped all of Sarah Jenkins' treatments. When Sarah Jenkins was brought to apologize to me, she looked as haggard as I had been in prison. Her exquisite makeup was long gone, her eyes bloodshot. She looked at me, both angry and afraid. "Olivia Hart, I ended up losing to you, my childhood connection." She gritted her teeth, absolutely refusing to say the words "I'm sorry." David Miller gradually lost patience and grabbed her by the throat, just as he had once done to me. "Sarah Jenkins, you've lied to me for so long, how dare you say such things? You won't escape the suffering Olivia has endured." Sarah Jenkins collapsed onto the ground in a heap. Her eyes, looking at everyone, were full of resentment. Suddenly, she started to laugh. "David Miller, do you think you're so devoted? If you only loved me, why would you agree to a strategic marriage alliance? Why would you specially arrange for Olivia Hart to be taken care of? You never mentioned getting married to me these past 5 years. Did you really think I didn't know you were still thinking about Olivia Hart? But you didn't love her that much either. Otherwise, how could you have not noticed anything after I did so much? On the surface, you love me, but in reality, you just wanted her to get out of prison sooner so you could marry her again, right? She's from a prominent family. I could never compare to her. Enough! David Miller seemed to have been hit where it hurt and exploded in anger. He grabbed Sarah Jenkins by the collar and savagely hit her. I thought, perhaps he had a tendency for violence since childhood, always resorting to hitting when things didn't go his way. When the bodyguard came in, Sarah Jenkins was already half dead from the beating. He contacted someone and ordered them to send Sarah Jenkins to prison that very day. I watched the farce and felt incredibly tired. Before I closed my eyes, I saw David Miller rushing over. He seemed to have stayed up all night watching over me. Stubble had grown on his chin. Seeing me awake, his voice was full of concern. Every time you fall asleep, I'm afraid you won't wake up again. Isn't that what you wanted? I smiled at him. His gaze dimmed. He opened his mouth to explain, but I spoke again. Don't worry. I know my body well. Even if I'm going to die, I'll take you with me. He moved his lips, but in the end, only nodded silently. David Miller invested heavily in my recovery. I underwent several major surgeries. Every day I woke up, I saw him by the bedside. I couldn't drive him away. He kept repeating his apologies. He also told me that the people who had bullied me had been punished. What about Sarah Jenkins? He showed me a video of Sarah Jenkins being humiliated in prison. Sarah Jenkins had cut her hair short and was being held down on the ground. The methods that had been used on me made her scream in pain. She knelt before the camera, begging for mercy, and finally started cursing David Miller. I lost interest before the video finished. David Miller thick-skinnedly asked me what I wanted to eat. I looked down at his attempt to try to please me. You don't need to stay by my side all the time. I was wrong. Yes. I didn't deny it. I accepted his treatment quite frankly. He owed me anyway, and I also wanted to live longer. I stayed in the hospital for several months. The daily smell of disinfectant always made me forget the passage of time. Until the day I was discharged, David Miller brought a cake. Happy birthday. I looked at the cake with the candle marking 29, feeling empty inside. The best years of my life had been wasted by him. I stood there watching him. Spending so much time together had made me realize that trying to physically hurt him would only hurt myself and wouldn't truly harm him. He seemed quite emotional. The doctor said your body can slowly recover. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. I blinked in confusion, not understanding what he meant. Are you out of your mind? Olivia. He took a step forward, wanting to hold my hand. Our wedding wasn't completed before. How about we have it again? The truth is, I always had feelings for you, I just didn't realize it. I thought Sarah Jenkins was right. David Miller was truly a scumbag through and through. If he had consistently protected Sarah Jenkins, perhaps I might have looked at him differently, thinking he was a devoted man. He didn't seem to realize the problem and continued to confess to me. Actually, I regretted sending you to prison right after. These past few years, I've been waiting for you to come out. I know you still like me. Can you forgive my past mistakes? His expression was sincere, that look of anticipation didn't seem faked. But I felt a wave of nausea and threw up again. Olivia! This time, David Miller didn't dodge. He anxiously wanted to take me to the hospital. Don't touch me. I pushed him away. You make me feel utterly disgusted. He froze, watching me helplessly. David Miller, I don't like you. I only feel hate for you. I was just misguided by that woman. Otherwise, I wouldn't have treated you like that. He started to choke up, his hands suspended in midair, unsure what to do. Give me another chance. Didn't you say we'd be together forever when we were kids? When he said these words, he even seemed a little wronged. But why should I? Just because he says he wants to be together? David Miller, you are truly narcissistic. From the moment you led the bullying against me, I hated you. You are my father's enemy, you destroyed our company, and now you want to be with me? Isn't that absurd? Perhaps in the past, I might have liked David Miller. But those feelings I hadn't even had time to decipher had disappeared long ago when he deliberately made trouble for me for Sarah Jenkins' sake. Now, I wished for David Miller to die every moment of every day. I did go back to the Miller family mansion. David Miller became exceptionally attentive. The staff in the house did a complete 180-degree turn in their attitude towards me. They all rushed to bring me the best things. Afraid I'd be angry, and afraid I wouldn't eat or drink. But in reality, I wasn't that difficult to get along with. I naturally accepted the financial support David Miller provided. But I was still very resistant to his attempts to get closer. He was very patient with me, always liking to take time to reminisce about our childhood. Actually, my parents missed you a lot. I watched him speak quietly, with no interest whatsoever. Mr. and Mrs. Miller had passed away 2 years ago. Honestly, I had no feelings for them either. After all, they would always side with their son. Bringing them up only added to my anger. A family doctor came every day to check on me. The only thing that made me happy was that my health was gradually recovering. Looking at the pile of things in my hands, I was determined to live. Living with David Miller had its advantages. 2. People in the circle started fawning over me again, and I encountered fewer obstacles when dealing with certain matters. 3 months later, I had contacted all the lawyers and witnesses. David Miller was suddenly summoned to court. He calmly accepted the trial to clear my family's name. The charges against the Hart family could finally be erased. I looked at David Miller across the witness stand and silently made a gesture of victory towards him. The schemes David Miller orchestrated back then would have to be paid for. The Hart family's shares were returned to us, and the house that had been auctioned off was also given back. I finally walked into my own home again. David Miller leaned against the doorframe, looking quite dejected. You wanted to restore your family's reputation? You could have just told me. I could have given you the money too. This is the result I waited 5 years for. It has nothing to do with you. I smiled at him, the burden on my heart finally lifted. David Miller had never genuinely intended to help me, otherwise, he wouldn't have only sent those harmless people to prison. I had planned for 5 years in prison. I needed to reclaim everything I lost on my own. He lingered in my house for a long time, watching the dust-covered furniture being restored and polished. Suddenly, he seemed to have lost all strength. Olivia, I really love you. Why can't you lean on me? I mocked him. Do you think I'm Sarah Jenkins? That I can only rely on you? David Miller, do you know what the biggest mistake I made in my life was? It was letting you think I liked you. After this lawsuit, Miller Industries would be severely impacted. Much of their subsequent growth was achieved using the funds they had swallowed from my family. Having to return it now would undoubtedly cripple them. In the face of profit, David Miller stopped talking about loving me. The reporters were already chasing after him with cameras and microphones, but he shut himself away. I said, I'm just seeking justice for myself. I needed everyone to know how David Miller had done evil under a facade of benevolence. I approached every interview with enthusiasm. The truth about my family's bankruptcy surfaced. Miller Industries stock plummeted. People online were expressing outrage on my behalf. Their condemnation of David Miller was fierce. My actions became bolder. I even allied with people he had sent to prison, just to expose some of David Miller's illegal activities. During this time, he contacted me frequently, always trying to get me to calm down. I avoided seeing him. After a while, he had to save face and could only speak to me at formal occasions. I didn't understand his attitude towards me. It was often a mix of resentment and helplessness. Watching David Miller overwhelmed with all sorts of problems, I added fuel to the fire. By the end of the year, David Miller's verdict was delivered. With the pressure of public opinion this time, he couldn't escape a 4-year prison sentence. He looked at me with hatred in court, and I liked it. At first, I thought I was going to die soon, so I planned to use the most direct method to take him with me. But now, making him walk the path I had walked felt more satisfying. The day David Miller was arrested, countless media outlets scrambled to report it. I chose that day to reopen my business. My goal was to take over David Miller's business empire within 4 years. And to do it through legitimate means. I visited David Miller once during the new year. He had a shaved head, his eyes vacant. I hadn't requested any special treatment for him. But how the people he had sent in there would treat him was anyone's guess. Before I left, he hesitated and called out to me, "Olivia, I often regret not completing the strategic marriage alliance between OU. Our families back then. I never moved on from you. Now suffering the torment you went through, it's only fair." I didn't respond, calmly preparing to leave. He suddenly asked again, "After I get out of prison, can you still be with me?" I only answered him with one word, "Get out."